This is CBC Vancouver News.
I've never seen that before, that close. It's very unnerving.
Ordered to leave as they watch the flames light up the sky. We check in with some of the hundreds forced from their homes by wildfire, moving dangerously close to Osoyoos. Plus, off, then on, then off again. And now, word tonight, a deal is back on with a tentative agreement reached in BC's ongoing port dispute. And
no tree has blown me away more than this one. It literally is a wall of wood.
a famous photographer finds the tree of a lifetime, a 46-meter-high western red cedar near Tofino, why it's now being called a symbol of crucial biodiversity. Good evening, I'm Tanya Fletcher, and we begin with breaking news on the BC port dispute. Tonight, another tentative agreement has been reached. A joint statement from the Longshore Union and the BC Maritime Employers Association says they have concluded a negotiated collective agreement today with the help of the Canadian Industrial Relations Board. The statement says both sides are encouraging union members and member employers to ratify this agreement. This is the latest development in the weeks-long port dispute saga. Port workers went on strike for 13 days and have so far rejected 2 proposed contract settlements. The federal minister had threatened to look at binding arbitration to end the dispute in this latest turn of events. To the wildfire situation now, and an out-of-control fire continues to threaten hundreds of homes in the Okanagan tonight. The Eagle Bluff fire started yesterday in Washington State, and within hours, it jumped the border into BC. It has forced the evacuation of 732 homes in and around Osoyoos and has a few thousand other properties on evacuation alert right now. Our Georgie Smythe is there with more on how a summer weekend suddenly turned into a scramble for safety.
A wall of flames from the south climbs over the Canada-US border and towards the town of Osoyoos.
It's scary because it's just a little wind change and things can go horribly wrong. So I've never seen that before, that close, and it's very unnerving.
With the fire just 4 kilometers away, residents of more than 700 homes were forced to evacuate.
I was all topsy-turvy. I was so thankful we decided to bring the dog to my aunt's house, because I thought if we had to leave him there and not know what was going to happen, that would have just broken all of our hearts. We don't know when we'll get to go back. We still don't know anything.
Another 2,000 homes are on evacuation alert, those residents told to be ready to leave at any moment. Osoyoos is also a tourist destination. At the height of the busy summer season, many visitors have been asked to leave.
Of course, some of them don't like that call in the morning, but once you explain, and they appreciate that we're thinking of them and we're thinking of their safety and we're thinking of them first.
Lighter winds and cooler temperatures are slowing the fire's spread, but it's still viewed as a threat to public safety. BC's interior is already a very dry place, but the fire risk here has increased alongside a worsening drought. Residents have been asked to conserve water for firefighting and to stay off the lake to make room for water bombers. In BC, the fire's grown to over 850 hectares. In the US, it's more than double that.
Yesterday, it made a pretty strong run, given the winds that we've had. Today, we have ground assets and air assets that are looking to take advantage of some of the lulls in our gusty winds that we've been having up here.
Georgie Smythe, CBC News, Osoyoos.
And we're keeping an eye on other fires around the province as well. And a positive update, all wildfires of note in northern BC, except for one, the Great Beaver Lake Fire, have been downgraded this weekend. While all are still classified as out of control, this is considered an optimistic sign that fire crews may be starting to get the upper hand in at least that region. Also, the campfire ban has been lifted in the Prince George Fire Centre, but Category 2 and 3 burns are still not allowed. Well, meanwhile, a fire that sparked up near Merritt yesterday is causing a little bit less concern today.
So we're incredibly grateful for the help that came down. The fire does seem to have responded fairly well to suppression activities overnight. Residents in Merritt will be seeing much less smoke from the site today, but it does remain an active fire, and crews are continuing to work on the site.
Crews were called yesterday afternoon to the former Tulco lumber mill site for the out-of-control blaze just south of town. Merritt's local firefighters were helped by crews from neighboring communities as well as the BC Wildfire Service all weekend. Well, the extreme danger of fighting wildfires is becoming devastatingly clear. This weekend marks the second firefighter death in BC this month alone. As Sarah Levitt explains, some say Canada's approach to training those on the front lines needs to change.
As crews continue to battle the Donny Creek fire in BC, they mourn one of their own. The RCMP confirms a 25-year-old has died, a man from Ontario working with the BC Wildfire Service. He was killed when his utility terrain vehicle rolled on a steep drop on a gravel road. He hasn't been publicly identified. It's the latest tragedy in this unprecedented Canadian wildfire season.
This is not a normal year. This is an extreme year, and things may continue to be extreme. We burned over 12 million hectares, which is the size of New Brunswick and Nova Scotia combined.
2 other firefighters have died fighting wildfires this year. 19-year-old Devin Gale in BC and 25-year-old Adam Yeadon in Northwest Territories. 41-year-old helicopter pilot Ryan Gould also died fighting a fire in Alberta. This latest person killed was working for a private contractor.
Definitely feel remorse for the families that have lost loved ones.
Chris Levin owns a private company in Alberta which helps fight forest fires. Each province and territory sets its own training and certification standards. But Levin says there should be a single federal standard.
So that we don't just have people with a 10-day course going out there for their first job that they've ever had, 19 years old, 18, 19 years old, going out and fighting fire. Let's try to give them a little bit better training.
But others say training isn't the issue.
Fire management personnel are professional and well-trained, and we just need more.
And it's not just those holding the hose. A whole range of people are needed, including water bomber pilots, hazardous tree experts, and incident command organizers.
It's been really difficult to recruit and retain firefighters because it's a hard job, it's a hot job, it's a smoky job, and unfortunately it's a dangerous job.
A dangerous job that fewer people want to take on as more forests burn. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Montreal.
And meanwhile, flags at some local fire departments are flying at half-mast to honor the fallen firefighters, including at this fire hall in Langford on the island. It's the 4th death in July among firefighters battling blazes across Western Canada, which is considered to be the worst wildfire season on record. Let's take a more detailed look at the forecast to see whether the weather will help or hinder firefighters. Let's start with a province-wide look. Here's our precipitation heading through tonight, overnight into tomorrow. We will see some, but as you can see, largely isolated up in the north. An unstable air mass, so really some isolated thunderstorms. Of course, that brings with it a chance of lightning through many areas as well. Not much in the way of rain for the south, especially in Osoyoos, where we're looking at the areas of concern. In fact, for Osoyoos, we do have a risk of isolated thunderstorms, it says, over the ridges early this evening into tonight. Winds will be gusting as well, 20 to 40 kilometers an hour through the evening and into tomorrow. So it'll be to be determined whether those winds will be pushing away from the areas of concern, those on evacuation alert. But crews will hope that perhaps the winds will stay calm, and any pockets of the rain that do come will certainly help them out as we head in. Well, 2 people have now been charged in the Amber Alert case that went on for nearly 2 weeks. The search ended last night when the 2 missing children were found safely in a town in Alberta. Saurabh Sandhu has the latest now from Surrey RCMP.
Surrey RCMP says the 2 children were located safely on Saturday evening near an Alberta town 2 hours west of Edmonton.
It was a rural property in the area of Edson, Alberta. It was a rental property that did have a house on it, but it was a very large property. It was determined that they had rented the property.
Investigators say they were notified of the group's presence in the area around 10 a.m. 9 hours later, the children were in police custody. That's when they were reunited with their father, who was present at the local detachment.
The kids are doing well considering everything. I think a key part of that was being able to be quickly reunited with their father.
At the property, 2 adults were arrested and a third person was detained.
There were some varying levels of cooperation during the arrests. However, all 3 adults were taken into custody without any significant force being required.
Investigators believe the group was at the property since July 18th, a day before the Amber Alert was issued.
That is all part of the ongoing investigation to determine the full timeline of what occurred. Obviously, at this point in time, we do have pieces of the timeline.
The mother of the children and her boyfriend have now been charged.
45-year-old Verity Bolton was charged with 2 counts of abduction in contravention to a custody order. And 53-year-old Abraxas Sherbing Glazov was charged with 2 counts of abduction of a person under 14 years of age.
Both remain in custody in Alberta, waiting for their next court appearance. No charges were recommended against a third person, an elderly man who was also with the group.
Based on the investigative information that we have so far and all the evidence, there is nothing to suggest at this point in time that he took any steps to aid or abet in the abduction of these children.
The BC Prosecution Service and Alberta Crown are working together to bring both of the accused back to BC to be brought before the courts. Saurabh Sandhu, CBC News, Vancouver.
In other news today, a well-known BC conservation photographer says he's documented the tree of a lifetime. He captured images of a 46-meter-high western red cedar near Tofino. At its base, it's nearly as wide as 2 city buses side by side. As our Chad Pawson is finding out, it's being viewed now as a symbol of critical biodiversity.
For 20 years, Victoria's TJ Watt has trekked through the province's vast and verdant woods, seeking out giant, gnarly old trees to photograph and make a case for their conservation. Now, at a time when exceptionally large trees have dwindled due to logging, he's recorded what he calls the highlight of his career.
In all the years that I've been doing this, no tree has blown me away more than this one. It literally is a wall of wood.
Watt photographed a western red cedar estimated at more than 1,000 years old on Flores Island in fabled Clayoquot Sound on Ahousaht First Nation territory. Its incredible vastness puts it among the biggest trees in the country.
Absolutely mind-blowing. It's over 17 feet wide. It's over 5 meters wide at the base. But unlike most other trees, it actually gets wider as it grows up.
Tyson Atleo with the Ahousaht First Nation has been to see the tree. He's also in awe of the specimen, which has been nicknamed the Wall.
Absolutely blown away in reflection, at the tree. Just the sheer value of biodiversity that is upheld and maintained by this living organism, and the ecosystems that it creates on its own are just so significant.
The Ahousaht Nation are keeping the tree's location a secret to protect it, but in telling the world now, Watt and Atleo want it to be a symbol.
Is a powerful statement to how well the Ahousaht have stewarded our territories and, the need to protect and preserve such significant trees like this.
Luckily, the tree is in an area currently off limits to logging. Ahousaht First Nation and others are finding ways to keep old trees in biodiverse forests standing while replacing revenues lost to logging with activities such as tourism.
I think it's a shining example of how First Nations can use tools such as conservation financing to help protect old growth forests in their territory while building more prosperous and sustainable economies based on conservation.
But to do more of this, nations need the help of the province to step in with additional conservation funding. They hope trees like the Wall will make a good argument for it. Chad Pawson, CBC News, Vancouver.
And elsewhere on the island, the 700th Little Free Library opened this weekend in Victoria. The community cut the ribbon earlier today. The library is named Kiddo Library because it specializes in sharing children's books. People can take books for free and also leave books for others to enjoy. Much like Vancouver and other cities, Little Free Libraries have become neighborhood staples, now in the capital region as well. Well, coming up, more on the tentative agreement. It's been reached in the BC port dispute, but this isn't the only labor dispute happening in Canada. A look at the others countrywide and whether it's part of a broader trend after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Well, the BC Port Union and employers have reached a tentative deal. Workers right across Canada are also taking job action in various sectors right now. Deanna Sumanek-Johnson has that story.
Shoppers hoping to get their weekly groceries had to go elsewhere. This metro in downtown Toronto is one of 27 locations in the region where 3,700 employees are on strike, saying they have to eat too.
We can't even afford to shop at our own stores. That needs to stop.
In Manitoba, Liquor Mart workers are also on strike, demanding better pay. And in BC, port workers walked off the job for 13 days, seeking better wages and job security. While they returned to work with a mediated agreement, the members have since rejected it. This labor relations expert has a name for it all.
Well, it's red hot labor summer.
He says workers who were forced to stay on the job during the pandemic have a new awareness of their significance and power.
In the case of the port and at Metro, these are workers who had tentative agreements and then voted them down. That's uncommon in the labor relations regime in Canada, and it tells me that workers are not happy. that they have increased expectations about what their labor is worth.
Just how far the striking workers might go to test that power remains to be seen. The federal government has threatened to end the port workers' dispute by imposing a deal, despite the controversy that could stir.
Well, right now, we want to make sure that governments recognize the rights of workers to negotiate freely and fairly. That should never be impeded. That should never be blocked.
As for those Sunday grocery shoppers, many have sympathy for the metro workers.
I'll just go somewhere else. It's fine. I mean, people are doing their thing.
I definitely understand, like, people go on strike for the right reasons. It's unfortunate. I do think that they deserve to get paid more.
In a post-pandemic world of high inflation, more workers may be primed to fight for better wages. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
A 111-year-old schoolhouse in Kitsilano has been saved from demolition. This week, the building will be transported across the Burrard Inlet to the North Shore. As Michelle Gassoub is finding out, the company behind the move hopes it'll inspire others to do the same.
This quaint yellow schoolhouse has been perched at the corner of Cornwall and Maple since 1912. It was slated for demolition to make space for Henry Hudson Elementary, but instead the structure has a dramatic journey ahead.
We said this is a really good building. It shouldn't be demolished. In fact, it'd be tragic if it was demolished. And so we said, listen, why don't we look at relocating and repurposing it somewhere?
In the dead of night on August 1st, the building will be loaded onto a trailer, rolled a couple of blocks west to Kitsilano Beach, then, at the very highest tide, moved onto a barge. From there, it will travel around Stanley Park and under the Lionsgate Bridge to its new home in North Vancouver. Work like this moves at a glacial pace. The whole operation will take upwards of 16 hours to make sure no part of the street or beach is damaged.
But the challenge is to get them as quickly as you can to water because of the complexities of the trolley lines and the power lines and trees and different road constraints. So we're very fortunate with this building. It was only 2 blocks away from Kitts Beach.
The schoolhouse will find new life with the Squamish Nation. The nation says the building will help address urgent infrastructure needs and will serve as a dedicated space to teach young people the Squamish culture and language. The hope is the school's journey across the inlet will inspire others to repurpose rather than demolish.
Imagine what this building has seen over the last 110 years. You know, when it was first built, we were mostly moving around by horse and carriage. I'm so excited to think about how the world will change around this building in the next 110 years.
And if you can wake up early enough on August 2nd, you too can catch a glimpse of the house and a piece of Vancouver heritage in the middle of the street. Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Vancouver.
Here's a live shot of Canby Street and City Hall in the background. A very moderate summer forecast for the South Coast. Up next, I'll time out the week ahead to see what kind of weather's in store. Stay with us. Welcome back. A beloved BC walking tour showcasing trees is facing a tough dilemma. As Callie McTavish explains, the government agency that runs the site now wants to charge the nonprofit to use it.
Look at the bark on this. Look how remarkable this is.
It's described as one of the best historical collections of trees in Western Canada. But volunteers with the Riverview Horticultural Centre Society say their popular walking tour could soon be uprooted.
Basically, it's a celebration of trees where people get to come out. We usually get 50 to 100 people, and we get different arborists to come and show people the trees and speak about them. Just over 100 years old.
The group says BC Housing, which manages the site in partnership with the Coquitlam First Nation, wants to put an end to their tree tours.
Look at all the seedlings under. These are all the babies.
The Crown Corporation told the society it has to pay $825 per tour to cover the cost of a liaison officer.
I don't think there's any way to interpret their behavior as benevolent or even neutral. I think they want us out.
BC Housing declined an interview, but in a statement writes the liaison officer would protect the privacy of residents receiving treatment for mental health and addictions who live on site.
We do not go near the housing. We respect that. All we need is an email saying where we can go, where we can't go.
BC Housing also writes that it wants to be fair to other groups who are all charged the fee to use the space for other events such as weddings, photo shoots, reunions, and filming.
See, it's gorgeous. I mean, look at that leaf. We love it.
Riverview Horticultural Centre Society, however, says it should be treated differently because it's a not-for-profit and offers its tours free of charge.
We get no money, and to not be able to do that and share with others it's heartbreaking. And it's sad. And we think if we're not sharing and educating, maybe the trees might not last, and that would be awful.
There are no official plans in place at this time to redevelop the old Riverview grounds. In 2015, the province entrusted BC Housing to create a plan to renew the lands, citing among several factors the Crown Corporation's ability to work with First Nations, nonprofits, and private developers to deliver housing. For now, BC Housing has allowed the Riverview Horticultural Centre Society to run 5 free tours this year, with the last one scheduled for October 22nd. Callie McTavish, CBC News, Vancouver.
And let's end with a look at the forecast for the Lower Mainland. Let's start with the current temperatures. Pretty nice night around the region, and we've got 16 degrees at YVR. Same thing across much of the South Coast. Pretty standard for this time of year. Here's our overnight hours. We'll dip down to a low of 13 degrees. Any remaining clouds should clear out overnight and make way for a mainly sunny day tomorrow. If you wanted really a very standard, almost boring July-like forecast, well, we do have one in store. It's going to be mainly sunny, right around average for this time of year. A couple degrees warmer, but this is really what we should be expecting for this time of year. And that is your late news for this Sunday. For news anytime, you can always head to our website. We're at cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is on the early edition. That's on CBC Radio 1. It starts tomorrow morning at 5:30. Thank you so much for watching this weekend. Good night.